Welcome to the Talented Learning Show podcast, episode 100 with me, Barry Kelly, entrepreneur, author, and co-founder of Thought Industries. That's right, I'm your guest host today, flipping the mic on John Lay, the independent learning tech analyst who's been behind the mic for, 99 episodes. That's right, folks. And you can find out more on his fiercely independent content at talentedlearning.com. John, what a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Wow. Great to be on my own show. This is awesome. This is awesome.
It's amazing, isn't it? I think, I don't know how many candidates you had to host the 100th show. I think you said somewhere 70 to 170, and then I made it to number one.
So, yeah, that's exactly it. But actually, I only asked one person. I only asked you. And the reason for that is we became friends almost 12 years ago as two pioneers in extended enterprise learning in a whole world of nobody else caring about it. And so we've spent the last 11 or 12 years talking and strategizing and planning and helping map this industry. And I couldn't think of anybody better to turn the tables here on the 100th episode.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much, John. No, it's an absolute pleasure. And yeah, I think I'm thinking back just before we kind of got started and I was planning for the show. I was reminiscing, whatever it was 12 years ago, 2013 or so, and thinking a little bit, from what was going on at the time. And like as someone that was co-founding a company, Thought Industries at the time, who was really focused on what we called sort of external learning, sort of that thesis of what happens when you turn learning outside the building. We just couldn't find information to sort of validate the market online. It was crickets. There was 10x the amount of information, around internal corporate training. There was analysts, there was trade shows, there was conferences, there was white papers. I mean, we were drowning in it, but zero. And I remember thinking, what are we going to do here? Or is this a false negative, false positive? What's happening? And I discovered you. And, once I started sort of reading about talented learning, about your background and what you were doing, it was amazing, right? It was sort of like, okay, suddenly someone else that we can talk to. And I think at the same time, you were beginning to build talented learning around the same time. So it's been an amazing journey. I think today we're going to get into this whole concept of extended enterprise and what it really means. I have a lot of questions about that term for sure, as you probably know. But, I very much appreciate the chats, the guidance, and all the reassurance and support along the way, and being able to share our journeys together in an industry that, in a market segment that I'm, incredibly proud to be part of over the years. And I think also I wanted to say this, and I wanted to say this to the listeners today, that I think, you have done so much for this market, for this segment, for all of us. I think you so clearly understood the companies that were operating in this space and their needs in terms of operating for-profit learning or extended enterprise learning or customer learning, whichever way you deemed it or where you were focused. And I think also truly understanding vendors, right? Who was doing what, where the market was going, and the needs of joining the needs together between the sort of people looking for technology and those providing it, and always incredibly independent. It really was. I think when I think about the ways that we interacted, not only did you have a really clear understanding of the sort of macro trends, that crystal ball we used to wait for every year when you were looking at the future, but also the macro components. Like we would turn up, every year, and here's the 20, 40, 60 or 10 features that we're releasing, and you would be able to go into sort of micro detail and how we were executing against those. And it was so valuable. So I'm incredibly appreciative of the time you've spent with us along the way. And before we get going, just a quick thing, probably a little bit off script here, but when I knew, I got the call to do the 100 podcast, I decided to reach out to some peers and some folks in the industry and ask them, would they mind sharing a little bit of their experience working with you, John? And I'm going to read a couple of them here, just as we kind of get started. The first one, here it goes, right? In the 12 years I've known John Lay, starting with the founding of Talented Learning, the customer education industry has undergone remarkable transformation. What was once a hidden gem of corporate training has evolved into one of the most impactful sectors in the learning world. Today, it's the place where learning professionals go to drive measurable business results. John's thought leadership has been unmatched, and his influence has played a pivotal role in reshaping how organizations view the value of learning. His work has helped elevate customer education from the margins to the forefront of business strategy. Thank you, John, for your vision, leadership, and lasting impact that you've made. It's a really nice tribute there. Another one, congratulations on 100 episodes, John. What a milestone. Finding the right LMS for your business can be, at best, a frustrating experience. John Lay and the Talented Learning Group quiet the noise, providing deep market insights you'd get from a Gartner or a Forrester, along with the personal touch and responsiveness from a true partner who takes the time to deeply understand your business. In an industry that is often tainted by pay-to-play, John and team live up to their standard, providing fiercely independent services that help their customers make smart choices. I look forward to the next 100 episodes. So it was nice. It was so nice.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. There was no shortage of people willing to line up and share, their appreciation for you and for what you've done over the years. So on behalf of everybody in the industry, congratulations on 100 episodes, John, and thank you so much for all you do. So we're going to jump in.
I know I got you for a host for a reason. That was great.
No problem. And yeah, I'm available for 104, 119, and 127. So you can call me for those.
Nice.
So today, just to kind of give the listeners an idea of what's coming here. So we're going to spend a little bit of time. We want to learn about you. This is a true turn the microphone around opportunity, which I'm excited about. We're going to learn a little bit about the podcast and how it's evolved over 99 episodes. We're going to talk about extended enterprise learning. Of course we are. I'm not going to get away with not digging in on that one. And then obviously we'll do a little bit of, rapid fire. And then we'd like to hear about the future. We want you to roll out that crystal ball and tell us what we can expect here in the, in the coming years. So
sounds fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right, here we go. All right, so kind of getting stuck in. Obviously, it would be fantastic to hear from you. And I personally, know a lot about your background. I haven't chatted for many years, but can you tell us a little bit about your pathway to, through your career, how Talented Learning got established, and really what did you see missing, or the needs at the time of the market as you were sort of making your way along?
All right, great. In a nutshell, almost 30 years ago, I got a master's degree in instructional technology. And as part of that program, they had this class called Responding to RFPs, of all things. And so the class had to pretend that we were separated into groups, and the groups pretended we were vendors, and we had to answer a real life RFP, and everybody hated it except me. I loved that class. I thought that was so much fun. And so when we graduated, literally everybody went out and got a doer job, and I went right into the go-to-market function. I wanted to answer RFPs. And so it led me to about 14 years of enterprise LMS sales for two different providers. And during all that time, I had a focus on external learning. And so as I watched external learning and developed it, I became one of the people that focused solely on it. And I prospected 100% for external learning opportunities, and 95% of my sales were external learning. And I was really odd in that process. And I noticed the same thing that you noticed 12 years ago, that nobody was talking about it ever. But I knew it was real because I was doing really well at it. And so I thought, well, the bar's pretty low. Why not me? And so I quit my job and I started Talented Learning. And I just started a thought leadership campaign as my strategy. I would just blog about how to buy and how to sell systems, and how to define requirements and what requirements are, and best practices for doing everything. And I gave myself 6 months to find a client. And if I didn't find a client, at that point, I'd have to go get a real job. And at 5.5 months, I found my first one. And now I've helped about 160 organizations go through a formal buying process here over the last 12 years. And so I do that same consulting piece over and over again at Talented Learning, of helping organizations figure out what they really need and take them through a professional buying process because the marketplace is super confusing. There's 1,000 vendors out there. They all do the same thing and they all do it differently at the same time. And so it becomes very confusing to navigate your way through that marketplace. And I'm not all the way through it. In the last 12 years or so, I've talked to at least 500 different vendors. And so that's only half the market penetration, and I try to meet and get updates all the time. And so buyers are confused. And what we try to do is just sort it out for them and make it easy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I mean, you were so right. I mean, it's. I remember you telling me that first story about prospecting for extended enterprise opportunities in the business, and really like there wasn't a lot of organizations that were focused on that. So it was a really interesting time, and I think I'd be curious about your thoughts on how has your business sort of changed in that time in terms of how you needed to provide the types of services and the types of consulting and analyst work to the market and these organizations over that time.
Curiously, it hasn't changed a whole lot. At least from a consulting standpoint, so what I did during my years of selling is any enterprise salesperson will do the same, is that you become a student of the buying process and you become a student of buyers.
Yeah.
And what I realized over time is that there was really good buyers, and those were the ones I knew they were a really good buyer because they would keep me on my heels the whole time as a seller. I was never in control, and there was very poor buyers, and poor buyers were the ones where I was always in control. I was always dictating the next step of the sales process and kind of driving it. And what I thought is if I could create a sales process or create a buying process that really emulated the best of the buyers that I encountered, then that should be repeatable and I could do a lot of good with it. And so in that first 6 months, that's what I did, is design that process. And that process today is almost exactly the same as what it was 12 years ago, because it's based on the business. It's based on starting with the business goals and what the metrics are that you're trying to impact and how you'll define success. And then working back through from the learner audiences and what you need them to do and how that rolls into the requirements that an organization would need. And if you go through that methodical process, what you end up doing is getting a blueprint that you can use to evaluate vendors with scientifically. And so what's changed in the process is essentially the technology has changed, but the
Right.
actual process and the steps that you have to go through, and then writing the RFP and going through a methodical process, all that is pretty much the same. So I think I did well, at least in the development of that process initially to frame it out. How Talented Learning has changed, though, is that what we offer is a lot more than that now. So we do a lot of work on the vendor side of the equation of helping organizations think through their strategy, try to help them with their differentiation, almost doing the exact same thing in reverse. Because vendors are, as it turns out, are in a lot of cases just as confused as buyers are, because they have 999 competitors and they're not sure if what they have is special or not. And so I do a lot of work down that vein of from an independent standpoint, helping organizations think through what is their special sauce and why, as the one thing. And then another sector that what we ended up doing over time, instead of just being the consulting arm of it, we built out the property of Talented Learning.
Yeah.
.com. So we have a learning system directory full of living profiles of different vendors with demonstrations and all the thought leaderships that we've done together. We also have put together a case study directory where we keep track of over 100 different case studies in the industry, all external learning so that people can learn from other people's examples. So we really build up, in addition to the consulting practice for vendors, also for investors, and then finally just a site for organizations to use and individuals to use in a self-serve manner. So it just keeps expanding. All of this, by the way, I had no clue when I started. All I wanted was that first client before 6 months, and the rest of it I figured I'd figure out when it got here.
Well, it's amazing, John, and it's what a great array of different sort of information and services that you offer too. And I think it was nice just to kind of get a little bit of a breakdown of how you look at the world every year. One of the things I wanted to maybe transition to is talking a little bit about the sort of podcast, and as you talk about the things that you do and Talent Learning does, this is an important way for people to be able to hear from you, from people in the industry along the way, maybe in their car on the way home or on a flight somewhere or when they're out for a run or a walk. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, how it started. I mean, it's a big undertaking, right? 100 episodes, pre-production, finding, guests to talk to, preparing with them, editing information, making it, and promoting it. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, no, it's been long and varied, but also pretty consistent. What ended up happening is I had another consultant that rode along with me for a little bit and was listening to basically how I conducted business on a daily basis. And after one of the calls with a potential customer, which is an awful lot like a podcast, he looks at me and says, "Why don't you do a podcast? That was so interesting." And I was like, that's not a bad idea. And within about a month, we had our first episode, and we've been pretty much going every 2 weeks. A new episode after that. But basically it's just my daily life. So every day I talk to vendors 4 or 5 times a day, getting updates or meeting new vendors and learning about their solution. And I ask the very similar questions, trying to figure out what do they do and who do they do it for? Give me examples and what's your differentiation and all the things I ask about on the podcast. And then on the buyer side, I have like a free 30-minute consult that I provide as just a service to the industry. Yeah. And those 30-minute calls are exactly like a podcast. I do the same thing on the buyer side. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And if we just put it out in the public, then other people that were behind or advanced from a professional standpoint could hear what the best are doing and how they're differentiating or how they're succeeding and how they were measuring and what they did first and what their advice was. And what it's turned into is just a nice ecosystem of positive reinforcement for all different types of learning professionals. And we really try to keep it varied on it's not varied in the sense that it's always about external learning to some degree, but it's varied about whether we talk about the business or the measurement or the functionality or the AI but we explore all around the topics, all for the good of, we think, the learning community, and especially the learning community thinking about external learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I assume over the 100 episodes, you have some favorite shows, or maybe shows that have been promoted by popularity from your listeners.
Yeah, for sure. There's, as it turns out, there's only 3 people that made return guests. You're one of them on there. So you're one of our most popular shows a couple different times. I think you show up 3 times in the top 10 in the first 99. So that's really good. Also, another guest that comes on a lot is really popular is Dr. Carl Kopp out of Commonwealth University of Bloomsburg, a thought leader for sure in all things learning technology. So every time he comes on, that's really good. But I think my favorite, Tamer Ali, also is a Malta from Authentic Learning Labs, is another very popular guest. John Wade from Brainstorm broke our YouTube records with tens and tens of thousands of views on that one. So I think he was one of the more popular from the video standpoint. Yeah. But by far, my favorites are the practitioners. Yeah. I love the episodes when I see somebody that's actually done it and they tell us about all the things that they're thinking about and how they went about it. They're the best. And we have at least 60 or 70 of those that I think are all but equal in my mind of teaching great lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. And how is it? I mean, as a medium, right, for your business, how valuable have you found it, and how is it contributing to sort of what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's for me, and I think for really any consultant, it's the show and thought leadership content is a fabulous way to find new clients. And so countless clients over the years have said, I heard you talking to Barry about this and that. And that's exactly what, we're running into. And so I have so many conversations that start off with some flavor of that. I heard you talking to that. And that's really like what we're struggling with right now. Can we have a talk? And so it's been a phenomenal way to find new clients through business need. And so it works both ways too. My guests find a lot of business just by being on the show for the exact same reason of getting to talk about or finding new jobs. I've had guests that are on the show that got a nice promotion on another job right after that. So it's been really interesting that way.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to switch topics just for a second, and I think to the big topic, right, which is this whole concept of external learning, the LMS industry in general that we're in. Obviously, a lot of organizations, across the world are starting to see a lot of innovation with AI and disruption. So we're going to talk a little bit about the future and where things are coming and how prepared everyone is for that, obviously. But I think I'd like to just maybe take a little trip down memory lane on the whole concept of what, the market that is called extended enterprise learning and how it's defined. I'd be curious to hear that. Also, I'm not sure exactly where this term came from. I can't remember if you're responsible or it came from somewhere else. So I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about that if you wouldn't mind, and then we can kind of talk about the rest of the industry too.
All right, great, great.
Yeah.
My favorite topic. So when I got out of that master's program and I got my very first job, it was with a marketing communications company, and they were doing things like creating websites and doing high-end video production, making multimedia kiosks. That's how old I am, and they were doing all kinds of stuff like that, and their primary customers were high tech and telecom clients like Unisys and Compaq and Hewlett Packard and SAP at the time. And they were doing basically shows and user groups for their extended customers. And these companies kept on asking them, we'd really like to create training and send that to our distributors on these products and services and to our customers that are using our server products and to teach them. And so that marketing communication company hired a whole bunch of us to start creating that content. And so I took that go-to-market position. So I was a sales guy, and I was selling at Compaq, and we were getting six figures for a CD-ROM that would be for about an hour worth of training. And we would create that custom. And so as a good salesperson, I would say, okay, let me go over and try to sell some projects to the HR and training department inside of these organizations. And we could do it, but we could only get 30,000, one third the cost. And it was then that it dawned on me what the difference was. And the difference was that in internal training and employee training and in compliance training, it's generally about reducing costs and automation. It's about saving money. Right. But with external learning, with partners and customers in particular, it's about revenue. It's about making money. And so using training as a business tool, it mattered less about what things cost, and it mattered more about the result that you were going to measure and get from that effort. And once that light bulb went off, that has really changed my career. And that's how I've been focused on extended enterprise all the time. And that's what I talk about now, even to this day, is it always comes back to revenue. How can you tie these efforts to revenue and get that proverbial seat at the table that internal L&D always pines for, but can't often find that seat. You can find that seat when you're tied to revenue, when you're tied to the initiatives that actually make a corporation more competitive overall. And so that's how we got the focus on that. The reason that it's called extended enterprise is because all the learning management systems were for employees. And what ended up happening over time is actually the customers of these learning management systems came with the need of external use cases, but they had to go to the internal LMSs and say, hey, it's kind of like an LMS, but we're trying to train partners. And so what the industry did, this is all the way back in the early 2000s, they called that extended enterprise, meaning that you start with your employees and then you extend out to the other audiences. And so that's where the name came from. In 2025, it's not that applicable because probably less than 50%, maybe even 40% of the initiatives are extend out for employees. What ended up happening over the last 12 years or 20 years is that the customer education departments or partner education departments kind of came up in a solo way and bought their own learning management systems, had their own learning system vendors like Thought Industries, for example, and they just did things on their own. And so an organization that would grow an employee LMS and a customer LMS and a customer LMS for Europe and a partner LMS for Asia Pac, and they collect all these different learning systems for different audiences. But like in all things in life, the pendulum swings. And so the pendulum's been swinging back. And so now a lot of my clients right now are clients that have collected through those manners, plus mergers and acquisitions, 5, 10, 15 commercial or custom systems, and they want to say, okay, can we bring this together? And so a lot of that now is consolidating back into true extended enterprise systems that service all the different audiences that an organization might have, internal or external.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. It's nice to see how, and it's interesting just to kind of hear how the sort of market has changed over that period of time. And look, it is. I think when we were starting out at Thought Industries, it was, it was a bigger challenge. We had to build commerce systems and multi-tenant systems, and we had to think about reporting and technology way beyond, just reporting on individual sort of learner outcomes. You have to start thinking about the financial sort of reporting. You have to look at how it's impacting their business, and it really was. I mean, and it still continues to be, quite amount of additional technology that sits in the orbit of this sort of core LMS, at the center of it all. And so it's just been fascinating. It's fascinating to see how the industry has changed. It's been fascinating to see how organizations have monetized learning as well, which is a huge part of this, and the creative, inventive ways in which these businesses are high margin learning businesses have been created over the years. And then, I think there's concentric circles, right? As you say, outside just the kind of organizations that are sort of training partners or customers, but so many companies in the world that just, are just, selling learning for profit, right? And
Yeah.
across consumer, sort of interest areas, for individuals who are in recreation. There's so much. It's just a vast industry with a lot of varying needs. So,
Hmm.
it's as I said, kind of coming back to what you do. It's great to have someone sort of connecting all the sort of different components of the business and the industry and the needs of the market, and helping sort of chart the way for that. Would you mind, I think, for if we had to just sort of you know give us a little bit of commentary on where we are right now as an industry. And I think maybe the broader LMS, and then maybe as it sort of starts to kind of move into, the different sort of categories. Where are we? What's happening?
Yeah, lots going on for sure. So what ended up happening is LMSs were developed 40 years ago for those compliance and employee purposes.
Yeah.
And it's really hard now in 2025 to find a company that doesn't have an LMS for their employees.
Yeah.
And so whether that's 50 employees or 50,000, quite frankly, if you're listening to this and you're in that situation, you don't have an LMS, you got to call me, because goodness gracious, you're behind. But it's like any other business function, it's been automated. But what happened is that for many years, with learning management systems, since they're employee focused, you can tell your employees, take this training or you're fired. And they can return back and say, I don't really enjoy the experience. And you can return back and say, take this training or you're fired, because it's that's the mentality. And
Yeah.
so what ended up happening is that the user experiences of these applications were horrible, and everybody hated their LMS. And so for a lot of my career, that was like a refrain. You hate your LMS. Because there wasn't an option to go to. But then the cloud came and mobile came, and all these new solutions were born, including yours. And they didn't have the limitations of before, and they were on the for-profit side of business. And so you had to do the things that you were talking about, from commerce to, world-class user interface that they would see on Netflix or anywhere else, seamless experience. You could have no friction, all the things that you didn't have to worry about in employee learning, you had to worry about with external learning. So to answer your question, what's the state of the industry? Since all the learning management systems of employees generally have a learning management system, the only new business is replacement business. So it's a net sum zero game. You're taking somebody's losing a client, you're gaining a client, or somebody's losing 3 or 4 clients if you're doing a consolidation. And so you're always basically winning business as an employee LMS by taking somebody else's. With customer learning and partner learning, that's not the case. So many organizations are on their first customer LMS. They don't have a partner LMS. They're doing things through Zoom, or they're doing things through Excel and different manners, or they're piggybacking on their internal system. And so what ended up happening is that all those employee LMS providers have now looked and said, okay, there's not enough business, just do an employee. And so we had all this migration into the external audiences. And it's been great for the industry because they use their power, their marketing power, their horsepower as an organization with 3,000 clients to help promote and talk about customer education and partner education and learning as a business. And as a result, now organizations are scrambling. If they don't have these technologies, they're behind competitively, not just behind in learning, they're behind competitively. And so there's been lots and lots of new systems improving. And because it's tied to revenue, then organizations are more inclined to change systems to get more business benefit out of that. So when I started Talented Learning and I started screaming by my lonesome self and you from the rooftops about extended learning, probably only about 10 or 15% of organizations had anything formal. And now I think that number is closer to 75 or 80%. And so that's been the big change in the industry. And so the final piece of this is what's happening is there's a war in the center between the organizations that were specialty external LMS providers and those that are now the multi-purpose ones coming into that same space. And so every given buying organization has to make that decision of specialist or all purpose. And that used to be really easy because the specialists were so far ahead, but that gap is closing. And so it's more competitive than ever with these 1,000 vendors.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think another question, which I must ask, and probably is a whole other podcast that we'd love to do, is just kind of around, artificial intelligence and how, I mean, it is essentially disrupting every single category of business there is right now across the board. And I'm really curious about how you think the market. I mean, I think there's going to be the incumbents, but there's going to be a whole bunch of new technologies that are going to flood the market that are probably going to change the way that people learn, the way that they interact with content, the way that they accomplish tasks that they may have been trained to do before, the way automation and workflow management is going to change these things. Like, where do you see, where do you see that going, in terms of the industry and how disruptive you think this can be overall?
It's disruptive. It's already happening. So as part of my duties here at Talented Learning, I got to stay up on the industry. So I do just countless briefings with vendors, either getting update briefings or meeting new vendors every single day. 3 years ago, I would hear machine learning, I would hear artificial, and there was always a whole bunch of imagine this and this, kind of happening in the background. But so it was really easy to exaggerate and tough to actually show it working. Flash forward to 2025, and I can't get through one of these briefings without talking about AI. Yeah. Every single learning company or learning vendor is implementing it in one way or another. And it's really fascinating on where it is. Some of the best advancements have been around authoring of courses. And it's actually really scary as an instructional designer. And I know, hundreds and hundreds of other instructional designers, that skill set is in jeopardy in the industry right now, right? Because these authoring tools, either standalone or integrated into the learning management systems as part of the learning management system, have the ability to create a course. And using scripted prompts, checkbox prompts type of thing, you can do things like create this course on this topic in this professional tone, written at this level with sections, and I want pre-test and post-test and interactive and source the graphics. And you basically give the whole thing. I want a study guide at the end. I want a gamification strategy. I want to have options to have scenario-based learning. And I want the users to be able to interact with each other in a cohort basis. Go. Yep. And it'll create that. When I said go back 30 years ago with that example, we went on a 3-month process go. Now that's an afternoon process to get it to 90%, 85%. And then an instructional designer will finish it up. So what's that mean to organizations? Well, it changes everything. It changes the dynamics of a team. It changes how fast a team can respond to market conditions. It allows you to be more strategic by creating content quicker, tied to more processes in your organization, especially with external learning. but it also shrinks your team size in a lot of cases because you don't need all these programmers, you don't need all these instructional designers. So it's having positive and negative type consequences in that way. Another thing that is super popular, a year ago I didn't see it at all. Now I have just about every vendor is talking about some sort of agent.
Yeah.
So having the concept of a learner agent or agent for any type of user on the LMS that accompanies you in the LMS or in your daily job, that basically is your filter to all the information. Think of it Chat GPT, but with all your company information, all your PDFs, all your SharePoint, all your intranet documents, and being able to ask questions and all your learning content, and having the agent basically do the work for you, answer you, tell you what the next thing is. Say, oh, would you like a 7-day little micro learning course? And I'll give you a little bit the next 7 days to teach you this. And learning that your personal style is that you like micro learning bursts where, Barry likes videos and, Tom likes videos, but only in Spanish. Otherwise, he'll read it. And so these agents will, start to learn your habits and style, and as it turns out, it's going to change the way, I think it's going to change the way that people are going to learn. It's already changing the way
Yeah.
people are going to learn. I go to ChatGPT. I don't go to HubSpot to take a course. I try to get my answer first in the immediate way, and then I have to go to HubSpot. I will.
Yeah.
And I'm like that in all aspects. So I think the whole industry is going to change because of AI, because I think learners are going to need to learn differently. And so as a result, these solutions need to be different. They need to be less course and resource based and more helping you based, of helping you to the next stage of your day or your career in a custom way. And so in the past, where you would create a SCORM course and 30,000 users would take that same SCORM course, in the future, there's going to be 30,000 variations of that course, if it is even a course, for the 30,000 different learners. It gets that uber personalized, and that's what AI is bringing. And then it adds things like content recommendations, or looking through your analytics. Like, what happens if you get 25,000 survey responses for a course? You don't do anything with that data, but AI can go in there and actually help you figure all that stuff out, of what's positive and negative. So it's showing up in that. It's showing up in the administration side of things, of just automating anything that's manual, just automatically doing it for you inside a system. So that's a big answer, but it's a big topic, as it turns out, because as vendors are having a harder time finding new business, and that employee side, they're turning to AI and the sizzle as a way to try to differentiate. And because they're using AI to create this AI, it's going even faster. And so the pace of what's changing inside of all just about every vendor in the industry, their pace of innovation is accelerating.
Right. Absolutely. And they have to be, right. And that's the way I think there will be challenges to the market by not only the incumbents that are in here, but by organizations and companies and technologies we've never even heard of yet. And I think, it's going to be really exciting. Of always, it's the technologies that are impacting the delivery of outcomes, right? So how do we help people do their job better, be more, get a professional certification, be able to operate at a level? I mean, that's really what the role of, the technologies that we've created over years are there to do. And how can we continue to build innovation and intelligence around all the other parts of the business, like, moving people along, as I said, through being able to execute those tasks at a higher level quickly. And I think that we're going to see a lot of rapid change. And as I said, you said too, people will learn differently, right? They are going to use learning in very, very specific ways to meet those outcomes. And I think that's the really exciting thing for this industry, and obviously like many others. So yeah, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be an entrepreneur. It's an exciting time to be a technologist and around these technologies. And it's mind blowing, on a daily basis to see the rate at which things are changing. And I know myself, there's things that would have taken me hours, weeks, months to accomplish when I started the company that I can literally do with a prompt right now. And yeah, it's truly mind blowing. But well, we'll be
There is
checking
new.
in. We'll be checking in on SCORM too. We'll wonder if SCORM will exist in 5 years.
I don't know. We thought it was wild and crazy when Storm 2004 came out, and that's
Oh,
still in the adoption phase. So my guess is
yeah.
it'll be around for a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to take a while to get out there. I think
Yeah.
we resisted SCORM for a very long time. I think the first 5 years we weren't even sure how to spell it, but eventually
Uh,
you got to get there. All right, so we're going to move to another quick segment here. And we appreciate you taking the time and sharing,
sure.
about the
This is
history.
great.
So this is going to be a little bit of a quick fire.
Uh-oh.
We're going to, yeah. No, you're good on your feet. You'll be fine. So yeah, I wanted to get through this. It's a good way for us to sort of get a little bit more insight on parts of your business and you, John, the person. Um, so are you ready? You ready to rock?
Uh,
All right, let's do
I'll take the bear over the shark
it.
in
Okay.
a head-to-head.
Right. All right, here we go. All right. First question. What are you most proud of with Talented Learning or the podcast? Either one so far.
I'm just proud that I made it work. When I started all this, both the podcast and Talented Learning, I mean, there's a big pile of doubt.
Yeah.
I didn't have any role models. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I didn't know if anybody was going to buy it. I just had an idea and 6 months worth of money. And I look back and I just see that it worked. The idea worked. People came. I don't have to spend on advertising. People come in through the content and they learn. And sometimes they contact me, but probably 95% of the times they don't. They're just learning, and basically Talented Learning's enabled all of that.
Yeah.
All around the world, in every corner of the world, people are learning about learning technology and the things that we put together. And when I look back at that body of work, I'm pretty proud of myself.
Absolutely, you should be. Yeah. Okay. Question number two. Out of all, in that journey, what have you done differently, you think?
I would have worried less. I would have worried less. I think I was
There's
so
two of us.
worried. I was so worried about, oh, people are going to think I'm dumb, or is this a good topic, or this webinar. I was always worried about what people were thinking, and the long and the short of it is I don't care at all anymore. I put that content out, and I just move forward, and I know that it helps. And I just think about all that time that I worried about that stuff was just a complete waste. So that's one thing I wouldn't do. The other thing I wouldn't do, again, I think is I would iterate more and build less. One of the things that I learned on this podcast, I ask everybody like an advice question. What do what advice would you give others in this circumstance? And not almost everybody, but I got the same advice, an unstatistically or statistically significant terms, I think, because it comes up all the time. They're just saying, do it and see what works and then change. Do it, see what works, and then change. And I have a tendency to do it and build it and make it better and stew on it and worry about it and then see if it works. And if I had it all to do over again, I'd do less of that building it all to completion and do more of the building it to 70, 80% and be able to be more nimble. And that's
Yeah.
probably my best advice really to anybody from a consulting field is you can never get it perfect at first. So don't try.
True. I'm going to ask you a question, probably for buyers and vendors, but like, which is oh my God, not again, question or biggest mistake you see both sides kind of make as organizations engage in the process of buying, selling, and getting a contract together for a piece of technology.
Mm. Well, on the buyer side, the biggest mistake is not giving enough time for the
Mhm.
buying process and then cutting steps out. And
Yeah.
so a lot of organizations they'll get enamored, like AI is like a perfect thing. You get enamored with one of these new AI native LMSs, and it's all cool, and you got all this cool stuff and all the agents and everything looks great, but you didn't start with what you're actually trying to achieve, and you didn't start with the business, and you didn't build consensus on that, and you didn't create your use cases. And so what ends up happening is you spend a lot of time looking at cool stuff and maybe even buying it, but then you
Yeah.
find yourself completely unprepared for what comes next. And a lot of my clients are 3 years down from that bad decision, where they rushed it through the first time. So in a nutshell, for buyers, if you know your contract is expiring and you know what that date is on your current LMS, then you need to work back 12 or 18 months from that date if you have any hope of doing it right, and take your time to go through the process. When you don't, you're almost inevitably where you're just rolling the dice of getting a system that's an LMS, but not exactly what you need. And then that's what always leads to a replacement. So that's the one side. On the vendor side, it's to be better at your discovery. I just am never cease to be surprised. So I sit in with these 3 hour demos or 2.5 hour demos, in the final demos with my clients, and I see these vendors pitch for 3 hours straight. And as a recovering LMS sales guy, I'm horrified for them in a lot of
Yeah.
cases because they're just pitching the same thing they pitch to every customer in the same way that they pitch it to every customer. And with 1,000 vendors in the marketplace, one advice that I can give to vendors to win a lot more is to listen more and ask more questions long before you get to the demo phase, and really structure how you demo and how you talk about it to that particular opportunity. And if it seems like a lot of work, it is. But if you want to win, it's worth it
Yeah.
to do that. And with AI and ChatGPT, for example, you can really automate a lot of those tasks of helping you get to those next questions and what list of questions should I ask based on this scenario, and try to get more consultative, because buyers have too many options to be not wowed. And so you
Yeah.
have to wow them every single time.
That's really good, really, really good advice, right? I mean, these are long processes, right? They're very detailed, and I think you're right. There's building the relationship, listening carefully, and doing your homework is so important. Do you I mean, sort of post COVID, how have you seen the sort of the mix between organizations being on site with clients now or still being virtual? Like, what's the percentage sort of breakdown right now, would you say, between both of those?
Thankfully for me, living in the middle of nowhere, it's really virtual. So I rarely go to client sites, at least from my standpoint,
Yeah,
because there's so many virtual teams with vendors. From the sales process, I'd say it's down to maybe 10 or 15% of going on
interesting.
site. So,
Yeah.
it's almost all virtual now. Clients prefer virtual. I just had a client here last couple of weeks where one of the vendors wanted to come on site, and they thought that was really strange. And so,
Yeah.
that's changed. But, 25 years ago, you were on site 100% of the time if you wanted to win. So just that aspect alone has made the industry more nimble. Instead of taking a day of travel and a day of a demo and a day of travel, you take a morning of demo, and
Yeah.
you have the rest of that time to do some good, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I hear you. So, a quick question, as part of this quick fire, do you still love RFPs as much as you did back in the day?
I know I don't know if love's the right word, but I just know them intimately. So
Yeah.
the process of writing them and reviewing them and getting through them and finding gray areas and figuring out exactly what a vendor's good or not good at and they're trying to hide, all that I still consider fun.
Yeah.
And I also consider it fun because my clients absolutely despise that process, and so I provide some nice value there
Yeah,
by doing it for
absolutely.
them.
Nice. All right. Well, give us a little bit more on the personal side. Can you tell us
Oh.
something we wouldn't necessarily know about you?
Something I almost never talk about is that I'm a woodworker, and but the from the whole kit and caboodle, when a tree falls down in our woods, I drag it to my sawmill and I cut it up into boards and I make all kinds of furniture and birdhouses and inside and outside, and I'm never without a project in my shop. So that's
Yeah.
probably one thing I do to try to get off the computer.
Absolutely. So that's the number one way to unplug and be able to turn it off, or is there other ways you do that too?
Yeah, so there's a couple. So I live on a
Yeah.
farm. As you know, we
Yeah.
planted a whole bunch of Christmas trees. So we have grow Christmas trees, and so I work on that and tend that in part of my spare time. But I would have to think my absolute favorite hobby right now is learning Spanish. So I've been on this quest for about 6 or 7 years, and I try to work it in every single day, and it's the favorite part of my day. So I use that usually right around noon. I take a class, and it's my recharge to get back for the next 5 hours of work after that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So last one, and then we'll kind of we'll get into another question here before we start to get to wrap up. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on what you would have done if talented learning hadn't happened. Or what would John Lay be doing now?
Yeah, I guess I'd still be some sort of sales guy,
Yeah,
or a sales leader, and maybe by this point, have maybe like your ex job.
yeah,
But I think without a doubt, I would have stayed in the industry, whether I went the consultant route or not. There's just too much to learn to get up to speed in this industry to go leave it. I'm always amazed that when I see people go to a parallel industry, I just don't see how you could do that after the learning curve. But that's probably what I would have done. And I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I got on this other side.
yeah.
It's been absolutely eye-opening to work with the buyers, because for those 14 years, I always thought they were thinking this or thought they were thinking that. And what's been really revealing is that I would have been wrong in most cases of
Yes.
what I think
Yeah,
they're thinking, and I'm still wrong today as a consultant. I get off a debrief,
yeah.
one of these 3-hour demos, and I was like, that thing was a train wreck. I'm thinking to myself after that demo was terrible, and I'll get on, and the whole room will be like, oh man, I love that one. And my jaw just drops. I just can't believe it sometimes. So it's really that part is interesting and subjective for sure.
Oh, awesome. Well, listen, thank you for sharing. Appreciate the quick fire. So just as we start to get into a little bit of a wrapping up here,
Mhm.
love to what's coming next. Tell us about the future talented learning, the podcast, but your work and kind of where you're going to be focused. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so it continues to expand. I'm now we're empty nesters, as our two daughters are in college now, and so that's opened up a whole bunch of time that I didn't have before, and so we've been investing that time. Me and my wife are both heavily in. Obviously, I'm heavily involved, but we're as a team run this business. And the part that we're really working on now is to develop talented learning into Lead Central Station for the industry.
Yeah.
So since it's just the natural next extension to do Capterra and software advice better than them,
Yeah.
because this is just for our segment. And so we already have all the information and all the traffic and all the followers that travel through our site and all the experience of the consulting. And so now what we're trying to build up is the piece in between, where we can help buyers quickly figure out what they need and get them to the right place and make those connections and just save time and save money and help route things and turn that middle part into a business. And so that's what I'm working on right now. We've been working on, and it's really having an impact. Even a lot of things that we're not consulting or that are not our consulting clients, we're still doing some good and getting them to the right place in the industry. And so we're working on that. I'm going to continue with the podcast. What we haven't talked about is I spun up a second podcast a couple of years ago called Customer Ed Nuggets, an
Yeah.
educational podcast just for this space. And so we'll continue on in doing that also. But I don't think I'm going to stray too far. I think I got to use AI to not do my old job better, though I'm certainly going to do that, but to use AI and keep on trying to innovate on how LMS selection and really learning technology can be different, with this technology going forward. And so I think responding to that and trying to respond to this rapid pace will be another thing that's up on my list to never forget about.
Awesome. Well, I think those are going to be really fantastic options for the industry as they sort of move forward and sort of really, really needed in many, many ways. So, as always, John, I just wanted to say a huge thank you from me, and also all the folks that, are in this industry and have been, as we mentioned at the top of the podcast here. You've been an incredible contributor to our market, a voice, as you said, that independent advice at every juncture along the way, and I think we appreciate it very much. It's great to tune in and hear you every week or two on the radio here, and really appreciate it. And I want to congratulate you for 100, not only on the 100 episodes of the podcast, but for what you've done and what you've created in talented learning. So thank you so much. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to be able to turn the microphone around, and I look forward to, maybe getting asked to do this again at some point, that would be fantastic.
All right.
Enjoy it.
200.
200. There we go.
We
All right,
got
we'll do
200.
that.
No, thanks
Yeah.
so much. It's fun turning the mic around. I rarely talk about myself, so that was cool to talk about how this all came together. And I appreciate you taking the time to do it. It's been a great journey, and it is nice because you surprised me all through this conversation. Listeners, this wasn't prepped, so I had no idea it was coming or any of that. So thanks for getting those quotes and everything. Listeners, thanks for tuning in to the 100th episode of the Talented Learning Show podcast series. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again on the next, guess what, 101. Guess who's going to be here? Josh Bersin. So we'll starting off our next 100 with probably the most famous person in the learning industry. So we hope to see you on the next, folks, and have a great day.